Hi everyone, my name is Caris and welcome back to my corner of the internet where I talk about books and other things that I enjoy. In today's video, I'm going to be doing the Moody reader tag. This tag was created by Slanted Spines and I wasn't tagged to do it, but I've seen both Charlotte from Coiny Reads and Lana from Lana X Libris, both of whose channels I absolutely love, do this tag recently. I know this tag was quite popular a little while ago and I didn't jump on the bandwagon at the time, but when I saw that both Charlotte and Lana had done it recently, I thought this is the resurgence. I'm going to jump on the trend now and do this tag. I actually find topics and discussions about people's personal experiences with reading almost as fascinating, if not more so, than having discussions about the actual books that people read, because I think it's a very universal topic. For example, I read no sci-fi, and if I was having a conversation with someone who reads purely sci-fi and nothing in common with me, then while we might be able to talk about our own favourite genres and talk about sort of like some of the key themes and universal themes, we probably wouldn't have much to relate on in terms of the actual books that we were reading. Whereas reading experience is universal, and although you may have like different opinions and different things, I feel like there is possibly more of a broad discussion to be had, and you can have conversations about these topics with everyone no matter what sort of books they read. At least that's just what I think. I always love watching this tag, so hopefully some of you will enjoy hearing my answers as well. So jumping right in at question 1, which is, do you consider yourself to be a mood reader? I would say that yes, on the whole I am a mood reader. I do always tend to have almost like a catalogue of books that I'm currently really interested in at the back of my mind, but from those books, in terms of what I pick up next, I do tend to be led by my mood. I do sometimes read things for set videos that I want to make, or for a book club or a project that I'm working on, but most of the time I like to go with my mood. However, I do think that it also depends on like what sort of mood I'm in and just how I'm feeling. So for example, at the moment I'm in such a reading mood. I'm feeling so passionate and just wanting to read all the time, and that can be a good thing and a bit of a burden, because it means that I'm always really keen to move on to the next thing, and I'm always really super excited about what I'm picking up next. But at the same time, it means that my brain is constantly telling me that I should be moving on to the next thing, which is quite difficult when you're trying to get through quite a long book like I currently am. On the other hand, if I'm not in a super reading mood, if I'm in a bit of a slump, I feel like that means that I can be led by my mood to not pick anything up, or to pick up something that's gonna like make it worse for me. So yes, I am a mood reader, but to how much of an extent I am depends on the circumstances. Question number 2 is, do you set TBR lists and do you stick to them? This sort of goes in with question number 1. So I do always tend to have a set TBR for upcoming months in the back of my head. So like at the moment, it's pretty much all of the books that I hauled recently, because they were all gifts from my friends and I really want to get to them, and they were all ones that I was really passionate about to begin with. I don't put anything on my wish list that I'm not super passionate about and super interested in getting around to soon. So I do always have like a TBR of the books that I'm most interested in. Then on a monthly basis, I do like to make a TBR video, because sometimes there'll be like a readathon that I want to take part in, or there will be a couple of books that I have to read. Not that I have to, but for like book clubs, because I want to take part in those book clubs. Ultimately, if a book club is going to do a book that I don't care about reading and I really don't want to read, then I just won't do that month. If there's a readathon on, I will try and meet prompts, but generally I will try and choose from the books that are like at the top of my radar. But other than that, I tend to pick out around 7 to 10 books at the start of the month that I'm like the most hyped for, and then I will tend to choose from that pile of books for the things that I read throughout that month, because I get very overwhelmed, and having like no sense of a TBR and no sense of books to pick from for that month, I find very overwhelming. Whereas if I just narrow it down, I've still got choice and I can still be led by my mood, because I know that I won't get around to that many books in a month, so I've still got a bit of flexibility. That being said, as I mentioned before, sometimes there will be like a certain video that I want to do. I've got a couple of projects coming up that I want to work on, and I will be setting myself more of like rigid TBRs for that. And to answer the like do I stick to it question, ultimately with my monthly TBRs or TBRs for readathons, then I'm not always that successful. Some months I am, some months I'm not, but for me it's more important that I'm just enjoying reading and what I'm consuming, as opposed to sticking to a TBR. Question 3 is, do books affect you emotionally, and does the mood of the book rub off on you? Again, yes and no. I would say that books have started affecting me emotionally a lot more recently, and I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's just like the current situation, or if something has like changed in me, because previously I never used to cry at books. I used to cry at TV shows quite a lot, but I can't remember the last time that I cried at a book before this year. But in terms of does it alter my mood, no, I don't think so. I don't tend to take the mood of the book with me into my everyday life. I can be sad by something and in the back of my mind it can still be there, like, oh, that was a really sad moment, but then that wouldn't mean that I would then go about my day feeling really down and really sad. And in the same way, I could read something amazing and really cheery in a book and I could acknowledge that as being happy, and I could be like momentarily like, oh, that's a really nice thing that's happened in that book. But if I'm having like a bad day, that happy scene in a book wouldn't be enough for me to be able to put a positive spin on the whole day. I know I mentioned TV shows and how I used to cry a lot more at TV shows than books in the past, and I do think that I still am a bit more emotionally impacted by TV shows. I feel like if something really sad has happened in a TV show or a film, then I am a bit more likely to be a bit more downcast about that throughout the day. I feel like I can brush books off a lot quicker. I think it's probably because with TV shows you've got that like visual connection, and I'm someone who finds it really difficult to actually picture books in my head. I know a lot of people can like see books played out before them like movies, but I can't do that. So I think that's why it is so rare that books have such like a big emotional impact on me. I guess what I'm trying to say is my emotions with books are very in the moment most of the time, whereas other sorts of media, I do tend to be able to carry those emotions for a longer period of time. Question 4 is, when you're feeling sad, do you turn to a happy book, a sad book, or a neutral book? To be honest, I know I said I was a mood reader, but I don't think I'm a mood reader to the extent where I really think about the sort of book that I'm reading when I'm feeling sad. 90% of the time I will just carry on with what I'm currently reading. But if I was to pick up a specific book just because I was feeling sad, then to be honest I think it would probably be a sad one. I am the sort of person who watches sad films and sad TV shows and things that I know I'm going to cry at when I'm feeling down, because I find it very cathartic. I like that sort of like release of emotions. If it can make me cry, then great. Question number 5 is, most often do you read to escape, to learn, or to critically review? To be honest, a combination of all three. I guess most of my reading I am learning something from it, but it's not always something that I'm consciously thinking of when I'm going into a book. Like, I'm not picking something up to be like, I am reading this because I want to learn about this, unless it's non-fiction. But that being said, I do try to be mindful when I am thinking about the books that I'm purchasing and the books that I'm consuming, to make sure that I am reading from a variety of perspectives and experiences, and that is in order to learn. But I'm not then thinking about the certain thing that I want to learn when I ultimately come to pick that book up. Because in the moment I am very much about reading just for enjoyment, for self-care, and ultimately to escape my everyday life. I'm not sure about to critically review. I did a lot of that when I was at uni, and obviously in my job I'm an editor, so I sort of do that with the books that I'm reading for work. So then when I'm consuming books just for my own enjoyment, I like to steer a bit more away from critical reviewing. But obviously I am applying an element to that because I like to talk about books on my channel and talk about them honestly. Question number 6 is, what is a book that made you laugh out loud? And honestly, I could not think of an answer for this. I don't tend to laugh at books. And to be honest, laughing out loud is something that I very rarely do with like TV shows and stuff either. When I do live shows and stuff, I feel like I'm always laughing, and I feel like when I'm doing vlogs I'm laughing. But actually watching something and knowing that my response is meant to be laughing, there's just something about that that then stops me from doing that. Is that weird? Even comedy TV shows, I will watch them and I'll enjoy them and I'll find them funny, but I won't sit there like laughing out loud. I think the last thing that I read that I can remember laughing out loud at is a story that Emily from Emily Kathleen Reads wrote. I will leave a link to my vlog where you can see me losing it reading that, and that was such a reaction that I never have to books, but I think it was because it was very like personal and related to a conversation that we'd had on a live show, so I had that sort of connection to it. But other books, like other than that, I'm not sure. Like maybe the Murder Most Unladylike series I probably found funny and humorous, but I don't think that I laughed out loud. They would probably be like the most humorous things that I've read recently. Number 7 is, what's a book that's made you cry or really moved you? Love After Love by Ingrid Prasad. I will put the picture in again. I put it in another video recently, but this is me as I was reading it. You can't actually see how much I was crying from this picture, but it was streams of tears. It's just stayed with me ever since reading it, and I know it's going to stay with me for a very, very long time because of that reaction that I had to it. It was so unexpected. It was so beyond how I normally react to books, and so cathartic almost, as I was saying before. Question 8 is a book that you just didn't know how you feel about, and for this one I'm going to briefly mention Winter by Ali Smith. To be honest, the further I'm removed from this and the longer it's been since I've read it, the more I'm pretty sure that I didn't like it, verging on hated it. But at the time, I was just very, very confused with how I felt. Like, I appreciated some of the uses of language, and at the beginning I thought I was going to really enjoy it because I thought it was very clever in places. But I just think ultimately this writing style is not for me, and in places I think it was trying to be too clever. So then I felt a huge disconnect to the characters, and I'm such a character-driven reader. I connect more to characters than plot most of the time. To not have any sort of connection with the characters, I just found that I didn't care for the story. I think at the time when I first read it, even though it was only a few months ago, my reading tastes and my own understanding and knowledge of what I like have developed so much since even then. And because this was my first sort of step into literary fiction, I think I thought that I had to like it, or that if I didn't like this then I wouldn't like literary fiction, and that is so wrong because I've read quite a lot of literary fiction now and I've loved pretty much all of it other than this. Question number 9 is, are you more likely to read on a sunny day or a cloudy day? I don't think I really have a preference. I definitely think on sunny days, if I have the time for reading, then that is when I get the most done. So I'm thinking of like a day on holiday. I'm very like adventurous when it comes to holidays, but if I do have a day where I'm having like a beach day or something, those are the sorts of days where I do get the most read, especially in the summer because the days are longer as well, so you're more likely to spend more time at the beach. And if I've dedicated all that time to just like relaxing, then I will get more read then than on a cloudy day, because I feel like if I'm inside I get way more distracted by like Netflix, YouTube. Question number 10 is, do you normally set a mood when you're reading? So with lights, candles, smells, that sort of thing. 75% of the time, no, I just read. I feel like I do quite a lot of my reading like snatching a bit of time here and there, or I'm reading first thing in the morning before work and I don't really want to do like a whole big setup. But I do like putting a candle on before bed sometimes and having like a really cozy night. I do really love watching read with me videos, and sometimes there'll be like some sort of ambient music in them, and I do like when I remember watching the sort of ambient rooms like New York cafe. So ultimately no, I don't, but that is the sort of reader that I aspire to be, because I just think it looks so cozy and I love the like aesthetic is probably not the right word, but I love that whole vibe of like being all snuggled up and having candles on and fairy lights and sort of like soft lighting. That is the dream, but that is not me. And the final question is, can you jump from book to book, or do you need buffer time between them? If we're talking in terms of reading multiple books at once, then I do work a lot better when I'm just reading one thing at once. I've had a few times this year where I've been reading several things, and there's always one that gets put on the back burner and I end up dragging out over the course of a month or so, and then I don't have the best reading experience with that one book because I've left it like so long between picking up sections of it. Although I do okay with having a physical book and an audio book at the same time, that's a little bit of a different experience for me. But if we're talking about like finishing a book and then moving on to the next one, I'm pretty good at just being able to jump from one to the other, but it does sort of depend on what book it is. I found last week, for example, I finished reading Promising Young Women, which was a very intense book, and then I jumped straight into Plain Bad Heroines literally like half an hour after having finished, and that isn't as intense, but the first chapter does deal with some pretty gruesome deaths, and I found that a bit of a strange experience, going from something so intense to something also very intense but in a different way. So I feel like I could have done with a little bit of a break maybe in that sense, rather than leaving literally just like half an hour. But most of the time if it's something a bit more light-hearted, then I'm fine. And to be honest, it's very rare that it is only half an hour when I'm going from book to book, because I will tend to finish like in bed on a night and then I'll just go to sleep. Or if I finish when I'm reading in the morning, then I'll have like a whole day of work afterwards and it will be several hours before I pick up a new book. So that's a very rare situation. And that was it. Those are all of my answers for the Moody book tag. I'm not going to tag anyone because I'm not sure who's done it. But if you haven't done it and you want to, then feel free to say that I tagged you, or I would love to hear your answers in the comments. Or you can just leave me an emoji in the comments to let me know that you've watched the video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're all keeping safe and staying well, and I will see you again next time. Bye!